Is everybody that maybe we're expecting today. So maybe we can do some quick introductions. Everybody knows me, but Johanna, you want to introduce yourself to the group? You and Charlie are both. This is your first time today, so.
Oh, okay, great. Well, hi, Charles and Rob. My name is Johanna. I work, or I am also at Virginia Tech. I work with Dr. Jeff Marion in the field of recreation ecology, which is the study of impacts to natural protected areas from recreation. So to put it really simply, it's hiking and camping impacts. So for my master's research, I was looking at how factors of the landscape like slope and terrain roughness might influence campsite size. So that got me interested in Dr. Pingle's research, and I might be trying to do something with bone mapping going through my PhD. So currently I am just starting my PhD in the GEEA program at Virginia Tech, and for those of you not familiar with it, it's the Geospatial and Environmental Analysis degree at Virginia Tech, and it's this partnership between the forestry program and the geography department. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Charlie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Charlie Aquilina. I'm a master's student in BSc, or Biological Systems Engineering, and I am using a drone that we have with a LiDAR unit to detect like ecological function in streams and riverscapes. So like streams in the floodplain. And actually I'm also looking into roughness as an indicator of ecology as well, as well as using it for hydraulic modeling. So yeah, I guess kind of similar enough research to Joanna actually, so that's kind of interesting. So yeah, and I'm also trying to compare our LiDAR data with our some structure for motion data, if you guys know that.
Oh, very cool. That's something that I'm sort of interested in as well, and as a sidebar.
Yeah, so I think my research will be using, like, comparing structure for motion in LiDAR to pick up roughness in streams and wetland ecosystems. So, yeah.
By the way, Johanna, did you happen to see the recorded presentation from a couple of weeks ago where I did the photogrammetry on a stick?
No, I didn't. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll make sure to get you that link. Yeah, I put a GoPro at the end of a 15-foot pole and gave it a try. It actually worked really well.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll share that link with you in a bit.
Okay, great.
Rob, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm a recent graduate of Northern Illinois University. I did some work for Dr. Thomas Pinkel when I was there. I did the augmented reality sandbox developed by, I think it was Professor Kralos at UC Davis. I pretty much recreated that thing, got it up and running, and was able to allow some other colleagues to do some research on it. Currently, I'm trying to recreate that AR sandbox, but instead of C++ and like Linux environment, I'm doing it in a game engine called Unity, as well as using Intel RealSense depth cameras instead of the Xbox Kinect like the original project used. I'm also doing some SLAM stuff with that RealSense camera, and that's pretty much my spiel.
So the SLAM stuff for Charlie and Johanna is basically the underpinnings of the structure from motion.
Oh yeah.
We usually put like a single camera, like a GoPro or even something better, and do the photography that way. A sensor like the Kinect and the RealSense that Rob is working with now has a couple of cameras, including an infrared camera, and it uses that to create. It's like a hardware-based solution to the problem instead of sort of a software-based solution. So
it's kind of like a 3D camera almost.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So Rob, you got a little presentation?
Yeah, a little one. I didn't do a ton the past 2 weeks, but I got a little bit.
That's okay. And Johanna, I know you're here just watching today. Charlie, did you have anything you wanted to present today? It's your first day too, so I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a 3-slide presentation about how I use random forest to predict biomass in the agricultural field that I can talk about if you want.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get going. Let me share my screen here. Okay, are you guys seeing that full screen?
Yep.
Okay.
And the fifth member of the lab group today is my dog, who's kind of floating around. So if he's petting the dog, that's what he's doing. Okay. So so it was we're actually moving out of our house as well. I think who was it? Jim Young said that he was moving. We're moving, so we're kind of in the middle of packing up the house and getting the other house ready. So a little bit shorter presentation than usual, which is probably for the best. One of the things that I finally did over the last couple of weeks that I've been meaning to do kind of all summer is mount our 3D camera on my Iris Plus drone. This drone is a pretty old model. It's maybe, I don't know, 5 years old or something, but it has a really nice feature in that it was kind of designed to handle a GoPro camera. That made it really easy to actually put the 3D spherical camera on there. So that camera captures a full sphere. So it's got a lens that goes forward and a lens that goes backward, and it stitches those together. I've shown some images in the group before. This is the first time that I think I'm showing 3D video taken from it. I'm not going to try to click on this, but why don't you guys try it at some point? Usually the video feed doesn't work so well over over Zoom. But if you click on this, it'll take you to the YouTube video. And the cool thing about this is that you can like pan around while you're watching the video. So I don't know how many of you guys have seen 3D video before, but like you can interact with it, you can look around, you can look up, you can look down. It's pretty sweet. Even cooler than that was, have you guys played around with the Google Cardboard at all?
Yeah.
So Google Cardboard is just, it's literally just like a piece of cardboard with some little lenses in it, and you can slip your phone in there. And basically, it's like immersive virtual reality on the cheap. So you slide your phone in there, you put it on, and it becomes like virtual reality goggles. And then it uses the accelerometer in the phone to kind of move the scene around. So as you kind of look around through these things, like it moves the image around. That turned out way better than I expected. So it feels like you're flying in the drone. You can look back, you can see the drone, you can look down, you can look all around. Really cool experience and really super easy to develop. So I was really impressed with this. What we're going to use this for is one of the projects that I'm working on is surveying tornado damage. So now we can fly a drone along the path of the tornado and then record video as we're doing it, and then bring that into the classroom so that students can basically do a fly along in the classroom and get a chance to sort of experience the whole thing. So I'm really excited about that. It worked way better than I thought and was way less work than I thought. So that was fun.
Cully's very similar, by the way.
What's that?
Cully is doing something very similar with virtual reality and bringing it into the classroom and like teaching people how to do like hydrological techniques, like using 3D goggles and stuff. So
sweet.
Yeah,
there's a ton of overlap with a lot of the people here at Virginia Tech, so that's really exciting for me. So yeah, we'll have to. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and let him know about the stuff we're doing. By the way, did you get a chance? I sent Charlie some slides from one of the videos from a few weeks ago. Did Jonathan or Cully get a chance to watch that already?
Yeah, Jonathan said that he's using Cloud Compare 2 to do some stuff now. He's a Cloud Compare novice, but he's working on it. But he did say to email you, for you to email him directly if you have any notes or want to like talk to him about or feedback about his papers and stuff. So.
Cool. Yeah, I will. At some point I'll pick that thread up again. The idea was one of the people that came out of Cully's lab did a comparison of terrestrial LiDAR and
It was aerial, like a flight.
Frontline with aerial lidar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was interested in that because they're two very different kinds of instruments, and that was the first time I'd seen a really nice comparison between those two. So, okay. The big paper, the manuscript that I'm working on right now is the stuff that came out of the REU from last summer. We did a lot of drone flights over the cenotes, and the idea is we wanted to monitor water levels in the cenote with the drone, with a 3D drone reconstruction, so structure for motion from all of those images. The catch for this was that it needs to be really precise in the vertical dimension. So because there's very little relief down there, so this is the northern Yucatan, super flat, just not a lot of variation, and so really getting those a vertical estimate precise is what it's all about. So to do that, I was running some, we gathered all the data and I'm kind of analyzing that normal data, but I'm also trying to make this pitch that like you can basically use cloud compare and fewer ground control points than you would think to really accurately register an image. So you go down and you know, the expectation is you have to get 5 to 6 ground control points to really get a good image tie, and each of those needs, you know, a fair amount of time to get dialed in. It makes the field work really arduous, right? And field work is hard enough. So if there's a way to kind of make it simpler and kind of wring a little bit more meaning out of the data with less work, we'd like to be able to do that. So I got all of the, I reran all of the images for the tilt analysis. So the idea is we're comparing sort of how different flight paths, these are the wrong images. The idea was to, you know, compare a flight going kind of what I'm calling like a sawtooth, where you're kind of short little legs on a lot of them, versus longitudinal, where you're kind of flying the length of the image. And then a double image where you're kind of doing both of those things, and see how that impacts the accuracy. So the more observations, the better. But according to kind of the simulation that I ran, how you actually fly it should make a difference in terms of how accurate those models come out. One interesting thing though that I found out was that when you're merging, so this was a single flight, so it kind of flew the one way and then it flew the second way. When I stitched those two together, I came up with a really bad image. So ordinarily you can take two projects and stitch them together, especially if they're the same flight, and there shouldn't have been any problem. I've done that many times, and usually it comes out great, better usually than either of the two models. In this case, it came out worse. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. I ran 20 of these models, so I have to figure out whether I could rerun 20 of them or whether I did something wrong. But that was kind of a hiccup that I'm trying to solve before I leave town. And then I've also taken some RTK GPS points with our MLID reach unit, and we're going to use those to kind of really quantify the differences. And one really strange thing that I found here is that on data that I took for, I think one of them was like 7 hours and one of them was 8 hours, so I left the GPS there for a really long time. That should have been good enough to guarantee, you know, centimeter level precision for sure. But those observations were 1 meter apart, which is terrible. I have no good explanation for why that would be. My sense is that a lot of these estimates of precision for GPS units are wildly overstated. There have been some studies that kind of show that, you know, if it says it's supposed to be within 10 centimeters, you know, it's substantially worse than that. I need to get to the bottom and try to figure out why that happened. So a couple of hiccups. One of the things, so we've been flying in the lab over the past year the DJI Mavic 2, which is a small little consumer drone. I was really kind of excited about that at first. I've kind of cooled on the DJI Mavic 2. There's been a lot of sort of weird software glitches that have made it not as useful as I would have thought. It's still a fine little platform. But before that, for the previous 2 years, we've been kind of working on open source drones, and I developed a little a a drone that we called the Busy Bee that actually came out of, Rob actually did some of the early work on this with the 3D printed drone as part of an undergraduate project. And then we since added these kind of aluminum arms to it instead of relying on a completely 3D printed drone. Ordinarily, they use carbon fiber to do this, but with kind of the ubiquity of 3D printing, I thought it would be a lot cooler if we could sort of come up with things that would be 3D printable instead of specialty parts that you'd have to get online to try to really kind of get the stuff out there. Anyway, so I've been kind of resurrected. I bought the parts for this to kind of rebuild the drone that I've made at NIU here. A lot of those parts just kind of sat on the shelf this year because I was busy with other projects. So this summer I was trying to get our open source mapping drone up and running again. The nice thing about this drone is it's really useful for training because it's 3D printable. It's also very repairable. So even a complete crash, we actually had two crashes with this stuff, and we're able to salvage 80 to 90% of the material, which means that the repair cost is only maybe if you're lucky, one of the crashes only broke 3D printable stuff. And none of the electronics were damaged, and so that was just sort of a couple of hours of sort of rebuilding it at a cost of $2 for the filament. The other one, we damaged a couple of the electronic parts, but maybe it's $100 to repair it instead of having to buy a new drone. So drones like the DJI Mavic they fly really well. They've got a lot more safeguards to prevent them from crashing, but if they do crash, they're kind of a loss. You can't really repair, other than the propellers, you're probably not going to repair a Mavic. Whereas this one I can, again, kind of bring into the classroom. I can let students fly, graduate students. If they break it, that's fine, right? We can just put it back together again. You probably learn something. So anyway, that process is coming along. I'm doing some redesign. I was never very happy with how the power distribution system worked. So I'm kind of upgrading that. In the process, I've now noticed that we have the full parts to build an entire second one. So I'm not sure whether this was an order malfunction or what, but we've got 2 flight controllers, we've got 4 extra motors, we've got 4 extra ESCs. So we can rebuild, we've got another GPS unit. We can basically build an entire second unit. So that's kind of cool. Or we could make the first unit into an octocopter, which would also be cool. One of the other things that I've got kind of on the burner right now is the AR Sandbox. You guys have all seen an AR Sandbox before?
No.
Okay. So I should have put a picture in here. So basically it's a box, literally a box full of sand, and then above it there's a projector and a sensor. The sensor figures out where the sand is, and the projector draws a topographic map.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
As you move the sand around, you get a new map. I was in a collaborative group that sort of did a study with these things. That's been submitted. We got revisions back, and they wanted to beef up a little section of the lit review. So I used that as an opportunity to get into get into the big literature in terms of how people understand topographic maps. And I've spent many hours, so probably more than I should have. Ordinarily, when you get reviews back, you can probably, depending on the level of criticism, you might spend an hour or 2 on each little point. And I probably spent 4 or 5 days on this to write 2 paragraphs, which is way overkill. But what I want to do is kind of use this as an opportunity to synthesize some of this literature and maybe try to get this out as its own little paper. A lot of the empirical work that gets done on map reading, topographic map reading, just kind of breezes through a couple of citations, maybe it's 8 to 10 citations, but there's this like 50, 60 year literature that I think deserves to be, to have sort of a full treatment. So I'll probably do that. I don't have any, so none of the incoming graduate students are here today, but maybe for Johanna and Charlie, and Rob, you can chime in on this too. I didn't get a lot of training on how to do a lit review when I was a grad student. They just sort of, you kind of winged it, and, you know, an extension of writing a paper, right? It's sort of just like writing a big paper, but really doing a good lit review is a little bit different than writing a paper, right? The depth in which you need to kind of understand the literature is different. How you assemble it is different. The language is different. So, Johanna, having just finished your master's recently, and Charlie, having just done your lit review, is this something that you think would be of use to grad students?
Like training and lit review, yes, because I literally was told to just do it, and then so I just made a stab at it. And then I think my advisor did give me some like materials after the first draft, but yeah, I mean, it would be great to, you know, go into it with some knowledge for sure. So
okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see how, because I know a lot of professors do lit reviews slightly differently, using different software, different methods of like keeping everything organized. So I think I would be interested in seeing how you may do that as well. There's some really good, so I don't know, have you ever heard of, there's this professor at Griffith University in Australia. She does systematic quantitative literature reviews, and she's gotten a lot of papers published or lit reviews published using that method, and she has a lot of really good like YouTube videos and content to help students do systematic quantitative literature reviews, which is, I think, what you're talking about. It's a really thorough search through the literature. Yeah. So that might be a resource to.
That'd be awesome.
As well.
Can you send a couple of those links over Slack at the end of the meeting?
Yep, I could do that.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to put that in there. Yeah, I think, like you said, like everybody does it a little bit differently, and there's no really, you know, it's not so much that I would want to teach like the method to do a lit review, because everybody's, but I think ideas and sort of getting people started, and I think that kind of stuff is kind of valuable. So maybe we'll put that on the docket then for early fall, and we'll do that at one of the lab meetings. A couple of other little things. I had mentioned a little while ago that so I made a contribution to SciPy, one of the Python packages. I needed a spatial interpolator, and so I upgraded one of the methods in there to do what I needed it to do. And that was just something I did kind of on my own one Christmas break. And then I got an email, so then I got listed as an author on the website, which was cool enough. And then a few weeks ago, I got an email from some of the people on that team that said, well, we're trying to publish a paper about SciPy version 1. Would you like to be listed as an author? So I'm like, oh, definitely. So I got an email late last night, actually, that I was confirmed as an author for the SciPy 1.0 paper. They're going to submit it here in the next couple of weeks, so that was really exciting. Hannah Ebo also submitted her thesis paper to Natural Hazards yesterday. So I'm the co-author on that paper. That was pretty exciting to see that come out. Some really innovative stuff in there. So I'm looking forward to the comments. And then I'm on the organization committee for AutoCarto 2020, which may not be of, maybe a little bit too geography specific for anybody here, but I'm excited to be a part of that team, and there are going to be some scholarships available to attend. So I think that the content and the stuff that you guys are all doing would fit well with that. So if you think you might be in California or want to be in California in May of next year, keep an eye out for that. And I'll certainly, the call for papers is probably going to go out just in the next week or two, and I'll keep everybody posted. But it would be great to see some of the students from the lab head out to that conference. So I'm thinking of pitching this as kind of an assignment. Again, none of the incoming graduate students are here today, and that's totally fine. But what I think I might do, and it'd be great to get some feedback here again from Johanna and Charlie. One of the things that incoming master's students sometimes struggle with is kind of locking in their thesis idea. It can take a long time to do that. It took me a really long time to do that when I was a grad student. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to kind of make some of that stuff happen a little more quickly. And so I thought, and by the way, I would say that a lot of the stuff is probably done in parallel with some of the stuff that's kind of done in our more formal geography class. But it never hurts to have sort of a second opinion on some of this stuff. Anyway, what I'd like to do is have the new incoming grad students kind of come up with 5 pitches for projects by mid-September, and then everybody on the, present those at a lab meeting, and that would be a good chance to get feedback from everybody in the group about the feasibility of those, which ones we kind of like, which ones we don't like. That's Johanna and Charlie, does that seem like something that would help?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great way to start your graduate school for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It took me about a year to figure out what I would focus on for my master's as well, and I think that could help force to start thinking about it. And work towards actually getting something going.
Charlie, what did you guys do in your lab? Your lab seems pretty cohesive. How did you? How do people kind of come up with thesis topics over at Cully's lab?
It was just basically me just bouncing ideas off Cully, and Cully just sort of directing it in the way where he already has like sort of expertise and resources available. So it sort of, that's why I got into roughness, because he already, he already has done a lot of papers on roughness and whatnot. So
that's one of the things that I definitely didn't appreciate as a grad student, but as an advisor, I'm definitely seeing like the value in getting students to connect with stuff that the lab was already doing. It really, stuff gets done. It's a better quality. It's easier to get going. There's more help available if you need it. Whereas, I think a lot of grad students come in and they're like, I'm just going to pull a topic out of the air, and it's just going to, and it's just harder to kind of get people then to see that that's 2 to 3 times harder doing it that way than to do something that's already pretty well connected with what the advisor is doing and the lab is doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so I'll send that to the new students, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's it for me. Rob, you want to take the reins next?
Sure. Is it Sharon?
I see a big me. Yes. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Guys, all see that right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, here's my lab report. It's only like 3 or 4 slides. I started working with some of the SLAM stuff with the D435. I tried getting it working on the Windows subsystem for Linux, but it wasn't able to connect, and I wasn't able to find anything about connecting anything to WSL over a USB. So my next step will probably be to try running that on the Raspberry Pi. I feel like that would be a lot smoother. However, it was super simple to set up and get running. I did have ROS was installed on the WSL, but I was able to like make a new workspace, download all the stuff relatively smoothly. I even had like a few issues, and I was able to fix those pretty quickly. So I'm either getting smarter with this, or it was genuinely easy. So one of the two. Either way is good. So next slide would be, I didn't do a whole lot with this.
Oh, can you go back one real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what exactly did you get set up? So you put a new instance of ROS on the Windows subsystem for Linux?
Not exactly. The ROS was still installed. Like it's the same ROS and everything. There was a few issues with it. Like I had to update like one of the what is it? The apt-get packages keys or something. There was an issue with like where it downloaded all this stuff.
Okay.
I was able to fix that. There was just like rerun one of the commands. What I did was actually create like a new workspace, and I was able to follow that really easily and get that running smoothly. So like it's kind of like a I was able to create like two separate projects more or less.
Okay, cool.
So I had a previous project where I was working with some of like the Google Cartographer and the HDL Slam projects. I was able to create like a separate one, so I can swap between the two without having to like install and uninstall a whole bunch of stuff.
Cool. By the way, did either of those get finished? The HDL Slam or the Google Cartographer? Where did those?
I got them running. I don't think I documented any of that.
All right, maybe better do that.
Okay. I'll work on that then.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Documentation.
But then,
or
say again?
documentation, or it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't do a whole lot of work with Unity 3D this past week. I did work on it a little bit. I wrote down some stuff like just to figure out what I needed to keep track of, like the size of the box, and like started figuring out like the equations for it. So, but that was pretty much it with that. As for some personal stuff, I'm in contact with Dr. Papka. I emailed him and I was able to reach out to him. He's helping me with the resume as well. I'm also having fun with job searches. There was a company that reached out to me saying that like my resume looked good and they were impressed with it, but they didn't see any Python for like professional Python experience. And they replied with, "We're looking for someone more fluent with the Python syntax."
Okay, well,
say again.
That's good feedback. Hello?
Most employers don't even
Hello.
say.
Yeah.
So.
What's that, Charlie?
I said most employers don't give you any feedback really, so it's good that at least they.
Yeah, and the good news is the lab is very fluent in Python, so we can help you out with that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I am fairly fluent with Python. They were just like it just seemed kind of like funny to me. They were asking for like professional experience, and then they were like, we want someone fluent with the syntax. It just like the way they worded it made it sound really weird.
All right. Well, in the future, not that you want to lie, but it's always better to go high. So if you feel like you're fluent, focus on the positive, right? You can, oh yeah, I definitely know Python, and here's some things that I've done with Python, and like, you know, pitch it that way instead of like, I don't really know Python.
Yeah.
You gotta get your foot in the door. That's the main. But one of the things, if you really want to kind of boost some of your stuff up there, you know, a lot of the projects that you're working on have Python connections. So for instance, the ROS has a Python binding, and you can kind of start playing around with that. And that would actually be pretty useful for the lab as well. And then that's just one more, you know, Python related thing that can go on your resume to kind of beef that up. But
yeah.
The other thing too is you can't do everything, and that's true enough. But I think Python I mean, maybe it's just, you know, because I use Python, but Python seems critical enough to me that I kind of really think everybody should know a good bit of it.
Yeah. Definitely. I've been wanting to learn more about Python, especially with like the SciPy and NumPy. There's also another library online that like can do animations to describe mathematical stuff, like functions and all kinds of stuff. There's a YouTube video or a YouTube channel that created it. It was 3 Blue, 1 Brown. They do a bunch of like explanations with like mathematical stuff, and I've been interested in learning that stuff. So I'll definitely dive more into it.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, if you
Okay,
find
but yeah,
materials,
that's all I got. So.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I was just saying, like, I definitely want to dive into Python too. So if there's any materials or anything, like, I need a good excuse to actually like get into the weeds. So I just need to find a project or something to work on to really understand what's going on with Python, because I've mostly just been doing stuff in R so far. Anyway.
Yeah, it's, you know, I would say R is a perfectly good language. There's nothing wrong with R at all. It's just, I really feel like the tide of data science is kind of shifting towards Python. You know, it plugs in well with a lot of the stuff that we're doing in geography. It's integrated really well with ArcGIS. So, yeah, you know, the way to do it is really just kind of, you know, if you've got data analysis that you need to run, Charlie, try to do it in Python, and, you know, let me know, or talk to people in your research group that if you have questions, like, yeah, that's what we're for, is to get you trained up on that stuff. So
yeah, I'll in the coming weeks I'll probably start looking at like the actual, like, using the LiDAR data soon. So I'll try to look into see what I can do with Python.
So one of the ways to get started with that is, and this would be really valuable for the lab as well, is PDAL is the Point Cloud Data Abstraction Library, and it essentially runs in Anaconda, and they've kind of made Python their primary conduit. So if you really want an excuse for a project to kind of get into LiDAR and Python, PDAL is your entryway.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that before, but I haven't been able to take advantage of that yet, but I'll look into that.
Okay.
All right, so I haven't done this before, but how do I get it on my screen?
There's a little toolbar, but I think the hotkey is Alt-S to share screen.
Okay. Alt-S. And then, does everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here, present. All right, so I'm using, so this is like a side project that Cully had me working on, because I'm basically just running his lab this summer. I'm getting paid to run his lab. So I'm using drone laser scanning, derived LiDAR metrics to predict biomass using random forest classification. So the project is in collaboration with an agricultural professor at Virginia State. The objective is to determine grass response from road grazing. And we have 64 plots, as you can see in the top right, all with different grasses and and then also 3 rows per plot with different road grazing patterns. They actually had grass go in and
I only see the first slide.
Same.
Huh?
I only see the first slide, the title slide.
Oh, sorry. On my screen, it says this as a second slide. That's weird.
Sometimes when you do the screen sharing, if you pick the wrong one, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Okay. So does that work?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. So yeah, there's 64 plots. Each have a different type of grass, and 3 rows per plot with different simulated grazing patterns. So literally, grad students went in and just did some sort of, pretended to be a goat for a little bit and tried to simulate like how a goat would eat the grass, basically. And so the objective is to determine how the grass would respond to certain grazing practices. So what we wanted to do was compare field data with our LiDAR data, basically, to predict like biomass using like sword height and vegetation density. Yeah. So what I did was I did a little bit of post-processing, used a base station to correct the data, isolated useful data in QGIS using our YellowScan plugin that we have, and then use LastTools to classify the ground points and the vegetation points. Then to get the plants response variables, I used ArcGIS Pro, used the tool LAS point statistics by area to determine max, median stored height, which is just the grass height, standard deviation of vegetation, and the count of vegetation and ground points. I used LVI, Lighter Vegetation Index, which is basically a vegetation density, which was basically using the vegetation points over the total points, just the vegetation and ground points. And then I used Random Forest, which uses decision trees to create a model, basically. There's an example in the top right that shows, this is actually from your slides from the GIS class. This is a decision tree to see if you want to play tennis. You use like 3 different factors to see whether or not you want to go out and play tennis. So the Random Forest does, a similar thing using like the 4 metrics that I created, the median, max stored height, standard deviation, and LVI. So I did that in R. I trained the data by splitting the points, the plots randomly, like 50% train, 50% test, and then I used the model to predict biomasses using the test points, and then I got a pretty linear relationship, as you can see in the bottom right. And I would love some feedback on this because I'm very new with the statistical analysis stuff. So if anyone has a better way or a different way to do things, let me know. So yeah, that's about it for me.
I'm just kind of absorbing your slide here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got these variable. What's sward height?
It's just the height of the grass. I don't know why they call it sward height, but yeah, just grass height basically. So yeah, we use for each plot we had a maximum sward height and a median sward height.
All right. So you ran your statistical model against collected biomass values, and so each of those was essentially, it's like you're running a regression, right, against biomass, right? Is that right?
That's how I interpreted it, is, yeah, basically.
Okay. So this is just your error collected versus. Did you run a regression on it, or did you only use Random Forest?
I just use Random Forest. I probably should just do a regression too. Yeah, like what was it? ANOVA or something? No, I'm trying to think back to your class. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that something like an ordinary least squares regression would work okay, and it'd be good for you to kind of get a sense of the quality of those results versus the quality of Random Forest.
Okay.
My take on Random Forest and other kind of machine learning stuff is if your business is predicting the values as accurately as you can, Random Forest is often, but not always, going to be your best bet. So machine learning techniques do tend to wring out a little bit of extra value from your data. And the reason for that is it's because they don't rely on these assumptions of normality. So especially if your data is non-normal in some way, you're going to get better results. On the other hand, an ordinary regression is both more computationally efficient and of very high quality for almost all problems that you're going to run into. So the reason it's been working for the last 100 years is it is a good system for predicting values, generally speaking. And sometimes assumptions of non-normality or if your data is non-normal, it doesn't always affect the results as much as you would think. So if you go back to those slides actually from that class and you compare some of the R-squared values, they're not that different, and in some cases regression actually is better.
Okay.
So I think running the random forest is a good idea, if nothing else, to get you experience in it. But comparing it to a normal regression is also a good idea.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for making the time on a summer Friday again to stop in. We'll probably be back in 2 weeks. Let's see. So that's the date on that. That's the 9th. I'm still going to be out of town on the 9th, so probably the 9th will be another Zoom meeting. And then ordinarily during the school session, we would meet every week. Classes start on the 26th. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
1 more month of summer.
So we could probably make the 30th the first on-campus meeting. So we'll either do the next lab meeting on the 9th or the 16th, and I'll let you guys know.
That'll be in Wallace.
What's that?
Will that be in Wallace or?
The first meeting on the 30th, the first live meeting will be in Wallace. We'll do one more Zoom meeting over the summer since people are still likely to be traveling. I'm definitely traveling on the 9th. I should be back. But we'll do one more Zoom.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good weekend.
All right.
You
thank
too.
you.
Bye.
See ya.